Welcome to Creepypasta Theater, a show where we explore the strange world of creepypasta. Join us as we hear tales best left untold, travel roads best left unexplored, and see sights best left unseen. Today's story, The Junkyard, written by Wil Grisack. This story is the intellectual property of its author and is being used here with permission. As dusk settled like a cloak, Charlie anxiously peered through the widening gap in the rusted chain link fence, noticeably smaller and more reserved than his taller, bolder friends. At 15, he was one of the youngest of the group, his wide eyes scanning the shadowy depths of the junkyard ahead. This was his first adventure without his brother, who was 2 years his senior and had always been by his side on such escapades, leaving Charlie feeling particularly out of his element. Guys? Hey, it's getting dark, guys. My mom's gonna start getting worried, and Charlie's voice faltered as the overpowering scent of the junkyard assaulted his senses. The air was thick with the pungent stench of rotting garbage and rusting metal, with the damp earthiness of the evening. He waved his hand in front of his face, trying to dispel the suffocating mixture of smells. David, lanky and adorned with the scars of past mischief, prodded the tear in the fence with a smirk. His lean muscles tensed as he mocked, "Oh, don't be such a wuss, Chuck. We all know you still sleep with a nightlight. Why don't you grow a pair?" Charlie's gaze flickered to Nathan and Sam, silently pleading for some support. Sam, the other 15-year-old boy, with his stout, pudgy build, squeezed through the fence with a grunt. His cheeks were flushed from the effort as he stood on the other side, brushing dirt and grime from his round knees. "You coming, Charlie?" he called out, a gentle smile creasing his face, oblivious to Charlie's hesitance. Nathan was the same age as David, with an athlete's build and a hint of an adventurer's fervor. He followed Sam with athletic ease while David held the fence with a teasing glare aimed at Charlie. "What'll it be, Chuck? You gonna wimp out on us?" David asked. Charlie's hands clenched into fists, the metal links cool and unforgiving beneath his touch. "All right," David sneered, turning away dismissively. "Suit yourself, you baby." "Wait!" Charlie's voice cracked, urgency breaking through as he reached out, his fingers releasing the cold, uneven wires of the fence. I'll go." His voice was a whisper against the boldness of his friends. With a deep breath, he crouched low, his heart thudding in his chest. The ground beneath him was gritty and damp, cool mud pressing against his palms as he squeezed through the narrow opening David held apart. The metallic tang of rust filled his nose as he reluctantly followed into the shadowy beyond. Nathan clapped him on the back, his broad smile reassuring. "Don't worry, Charlie. I got your back." "Me too," Sam added, puffing out his chest. "Sam, you blob, you get winded walking around the block to school. Ain't no way you have anybody's back." David laughed, stepping back as Sam's smile faltered. "Now you sissies," David grinned, vaulting over a discarded tire. "Let's see what goodies we can find." As the evening shadows lengthened, the four friends delved deeper into the junkyard's heart. David, with careless enthusiasm, tossed aside random scraps, his hands smudging with grime. Charlie watched, his anxiety growing with each reckless discard of potentially sharp debris. In a quieter moment, Nathan glanced toward a cluttered area shimmering under the faint glow of the setting sun. "I'm going to check out over there. Seems like they've got some newer stuff this way," he said, his voice a steady contrast to the surrounding chaos. David, energized, ceased swinging a splintered wooden baseball bat and clapped Nathan on the shoulder. "That's a great idea," he burst out, his voice echoing off the metal heaps around them. "Let's split up. Whoever finds the coolest treasure wins, and we'll vote in 15 minutes? Sam, what's the time?" Sam, pleased to contribute, squinted at his watch in the dim light. "Almost 7:45. Oh, wait. Now it's 7:45. "Then our time starts now," David announced. He leapt up, hurling the bat into a nearby pile where it landed with a resonant clank, then startled a nearby crow. Trotting off, his laughter mingled with the rustling of leaves. He yelled back, "Winner doesn't have to pay for their ticket when we go to the movies next week." "Get ready to buy my ticket, fellas," Sam cheered, his grin wide, even as his breath hitched only a few paces into his dash. His flabby belly jostled comically with each step, shaking rhythmically as he pushed forward. The chilly evening air bit at his lungs, each sharp breath mingling with the uncomfortable bounce of his midsection. Nathan gave a casual shrug and broke into a jog towards his chosen spot. He slowed his speed beside Charlie, matching his pace to keep in step. "Hey, Charlie, how you holding up?" His voice carried a weight of concern that echoed their shared history. Charlie managed to nod, his voice measured, a bit too controlled. I'm all right, I guess," he murmured, his eyes briefly darting away, a clear sign he was guarding deeper feelings. Pausing, Nathan planted his feet firmly, facing Charlie with an earnest intensity. "Look, I know it's been tough. Max was my best friend too, and..." He trailed off, struggling to continue. "If you don't want to be alone right now, I can walk with you," he finally offered, his tone sincere. Charlie looked up, gratitude mixed with a stubborn resolve flashing across his face. "Thanks, Nathan, but you're not my brother. You don't have to watch over me just because Max is gone," he said sharply, his voice laced with a mix of defiance and pain. Nathan flinched slightly, his eyes clouding with a hint of hurt that quickly masked. He resumed his light jogging in place, his nods slow and thoughtful. "All right, man, just remember, if you change your mind, yell. I'll be right there," he assured him, managing a supportive smile that didn't quite reach his eyes before he took off toward his chosen exploration path. Left standing alone amid the sprawling junkyard, Charlie watched as his friends disappeared in search of their treasures. He gazed at the sky, now a canvas of deepening oranges, pinks, and purples. A reluctant smile tugged at his lips, inspired by the infectious excitement of the group. With a resigned yet playful shrug, he ambled down a narrow lane bordered by towering piles of discarded memories. Charlie wandered deeper into the junkyard's belly, his footsteps crunching on a carpet of gravel and twisted metal, each echo a sharp punctuation in the chilling air. The dying light cast the refuse, tangled heaps of broken lives, into haunting silhouettes against the twilight sky. From somewhere beyond the towering mounds, Sam's voice, buoyant with discovery, drifted through the cool air. "You guys won't believe what I found!" Pawing through a clutter of forsaken electronics and sun-faded upholstery, Charles' fingers stumbled upon an anomaly amidst the hard and soft debris. A smooth, cold object. His heart lurched as he unearthed the bleached bones of a small animal, its fragile skeleton tangled in the embrace of ancient cables. A chill shot through him, and he recoiled, stumbling backwards into a cold, metallic mass of an abandoned washing machine. His hands, seeking support, found only the hollow eye sockets of a half-buried cat skull. His yelp of shock, a sharp, ragged sound, tore through the silence. Gasping for breath, Charlie pushed himself upright. The acrid smell of rust mingled with the earthly decay of wet soil and rotting leaves, overpowering and pungent. He scanned the dim scene, the skeletal remains, a grim tableau against the dirt. Charlie muttered to himself, his voice a low murmur against the encroaching shadows. It's just a junkyard, right? Just sharp metal and the usual junkyard dangers. Not anything weird. He inhaled deeply, the air heavy and tinged with the acrid scent of metal and fear. Yeah, nothing weird here, he reassured himself, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that clung to him like the damp earth beneath his feet. Charlie scanned the area, his gaze landing on yet another skeleton nestled uncomfortably close to deep tire tracks. He paused, feeling a breeze on his skin. Okay, 3 skeletons is getting pretty weird, he muttered to himself, feeling a shiver of unease. A series of bones lay scattered, forming a grim trail that followed the mysterious vehicle's path. The path itself was narrow, hardly wide enough for a vehicle, twisting through the junkyard with barely enough room to maneuver. Who would drive through here? And why leave behind such a macabre trail of bones? These questions spun in Charlie's mind as he found himself almost absent-mindedly following the tracks. Each bone seemed to beckon him further, pulling him along as he tried desperately to stitch together a rational explanation. Despite his fear, his feet moved of their own accord, tracing the eerie path that the vehicle, and possibly something far stranger, had left behind. Charlie's progress slowed as he traced the trail of scattered bones, each one a somber marker on the path. He counted them, one by one, until he reached 63 different animal remains. The trail led him directly beneath the frame of a car, nestled in a circular clearing surrounded by mounds of trash that formed a sort of grim amphitheater. The car stood eerily pristine among the decay around it, a stark contrast to the rust and ruin that dominated the junkyard. As Charlie stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just any car. It was uncannily similar to the semi-classic model his brother Max had owned, a 1980s Ford Mustang. It was nothing too flashy, but a real treasure for a 17-year-old who had saved every dime for half a decade to buy it. It was the kind of car that promised freedom and adventure. Now, a ghostly echo of the past. Charlie's hands trembled as he hesitated, then reached out to touch the cool metal of the hood, expecting the familiar chill of painted steel. Instead, his fingers met an unnaturally warm surface, strangely pliant and leathery, as if he were touching the flesh of a reptile. Recoiling in shock, his heart raced as the texture under his fingers twisted his stomach with revulsion. The sight of the Mustang, the same deep blue shade as Max's, had already been overwhelming, bringing back vivid memories of twisted metal and shattered glass, the echo of sirens, and the unforgettable sight of his brother's lifeless form. Now, this bizarre, unsettling sensation added a surreal layer to his grief and horror. This car, a ghostly replica of his brother's dream, now felt like a monstrous distortion of reality, a cruel mockery of the past that tore at fresh wounds. Time's up! Charlie's attention snapped towards Sam's voice, announcing the end of their treasure hunt at 8 o'clock. He glanced back at the car, its silent form seeming almost sentient under the growing dusk. Though he knew it was just an old car, an inexplicable sensation crept over him, as if it were somehow watching him. "Gather up, losers, and check out what I found!" David's voice boomed across the junkyard, pulling Charlie from his thoughts. He took one last look at the car, its stoic presence chilling him slightly before jogging back to his friends. As he turned, the last slivers of light caught the windshield, reflecting the deepening twilight sky. Minutes later, Charlie reached their rendezvous point. Sam was triumphantly displaying a remote-control airplane, its wing crudely repaired, a crack running through it. The controller was nowhere to be seen, yet the plane still managed to capture Nathan's interest, who had gently placed his find, a 35mm film camera, aside to admire Sam's discovery. Sam's face lit up with excitement. "Check this out, Charlie! Isn't it cool?" He beckoned Charlie closer. Despite the noticeable repair, the model airplane was in surprisingly good condition, almost defying the rough elements of the junkyard. Charlie approached, his curiosity piqued by how such a delicate item could survive in such a place. "Wow, that was a good one," Charlie said, clearly impressed, though he exaggerated his enthusiasm a bit to make Sam feel even better. Nathan carefully handled the plane and passed it to Charlie for a closer look. "Just be careful with it. When David sees us, he's totally going to agree that I found the coolest thing," Sam said, reminding Charlie of why they had split up. He hadn't grabbed anything to show off, so he knew David was surely going to rub it in his face. Charlie thought about how Max would have handled the situation, probably putting David in his place to save Charlie from the ridicule of Max's less tactful friend. The thought of Max brought tears to his eyes, invoking painful memories of the accident. The harrowing image of his brother's final moments haunted him still. The car in the junkyard, so eerily similar to Max's, seemed to cast a dark, ominous presence. Even now, Charlie couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching him, as though it harbored the same fate that had claimed his brother. Then a hand landed on Charlie's shoulder. He flinched and screamed, involuntarily throwing the plane into the air, which then smashed into pieces on the ground. Sam's face twisted into an expression of horror as he watched his prize get destroyed by the impact. The plump boy rushed to the twisted fragments of the model plane, scooping them up. "Oh no!" Sam cried, while David laughed at the unfolding scene. "Whoa, no way! That's too good!" David explained, his laughter shrill like a witch's cackle. "Well, Tubby, looks like you brought the lamest prize to the party." In his hands, he held a bizarre monster mannequin, something Charlie recognized from their local Halloween store. It featured fins and shiny, oversized eyes, but was missing its lower half. David barely managed to contain his laughter as Sam turned to Charlie, confusion and hurt in his voice. "Why did you do that, Charlie?" Charlie met Sam's gaze, his eyes brimming with tears, not from the accident, but from the raw memories of his brother. I'm sorry, Sam. I didn't mean to." "Aw, man, that's even better," Dave taunted, pointing down at Charlie. "I got you so good you're crying. No freaking way!" His laughter cut through the stillness of the night. "You're such a spaz. Chuck the schmuck." Nathan stepped forward and offered Charlie a hand, helping him to his feet and quickly checking if he was okay. Then, with a hard glare, he turned towards David. With a swift push, Nathan knocked the mannequin from David's grip. David barely started to protest with a "Hey!" when Nathan was already in his face. "What the hell is your problem, man?" Nathan snapped, not giving David a chance to respond. We came out here to take his mind off of things. You can't be an asshole like this, dude. David, looking visibly irritated, glared at Nathan. Well, dude, he said, emphasizing the word with air quotes. I didn't even want to bring Chuck along. That was your idea. I knew he'd just whine about everything. Look at him. He pointed dismissively at Charlie, whose tears had begun to show. The kid's crying over getting dirty. Maxo has coddled him too much, and it's made him soft. Shut up! Charlie's voice cracked with a mix of grief and anger. Just shut up! His fists were clenched tight, his nails digging into his palms. He stared fiercely at Nathan. I don't need you trying to be my big brother. He gazed, then snapped at David. And I don't need to listen to your crap and hear you talk about Max that way. Just back off. A heavy silence fell over the group. Nathan and David stood, taken aback by Charlie's sudden defiance. Meanwhile, Sam, who had been quietly gathering the broken pieces of the plane, stood up. Hey, Charlie, what did you find? Nathan got this cool camera like the ones my dad used to have in high school, Sam said, his voice easing some of the tension. Seizing the moment to shift away from the confrontation, David awkwardly stepped around Nathan and towards Charlie. His expression mixed with annoyance and a grudging respect. He scoffed lightly. All right, Chuck, I hear you, he said, picking up the mannequin from the ground and tucking it under his arm. He gestured to Charlie with a challenging smirk. So why don't you show us what you found? If it's cooler than this freak, he said, tilting his head towards the mannequin, I'll not only buy your movie ticket, but I'll lay off. Deal? Charlie locked eyes with David, his gaze firm and unyielding. Thoughts of Max and the haunting image of the car flickered through his mind, fueling a resolve to firmly stand up to David's relentless taunting. With a deep breath, he steadied himself against the wave of emotions and said, Fine. Follow me. His voice, though low, carried a newfound steadiness. He turned and led the way down the narrow path that snaked through the heart of the junkyard. As they walked, the crunch of decaying scraps and twisted metal underfoot punctuated the eerie silence. Shadows stretched long and sinister in the deepening dusk, transforming the scattered debris into grotesque figures that seemed to watch them pass. As they moved, David couldn't resist the macabre allure of a trail of animal bones, picking one up and turning it over in his hands with a morbid curiosity that bordered on disrespect. His actions drew a sharp, disapproving look from Nathan, who frowned deeply, his brows knitting together in visible annoyance. Sam, on the other hand, trailed behind with a light, almost buoyant step, seemingly oblivious to the somber mood. He hummed softly to himself, enchanted by the adventure and the mystery, his eyes wide with naive wonder as he skipped slightly to dodge the larger pieces of junk. Charlie, however, moved with a palpable sense of dread. Each step towards the car tightened the knot in his stomach, his eyes darting nervously around, half expecting the shadows to stir to life. Finally, the group emerged into the clearing where the car sat. It was eerily pristine, its paint glossy under the waning light, making it look surreal against the backdrop of decay. The vehicle, an uncanny replica of Max's cherished Mustang, looked as though it had been driven straight out of the past and abandoned in this ghostly area. Nathan caught his breath, his initial shock giving way to a mix of reverence and sorrow. No way. Is that? He stammered, stepping closer, his hands hesitantly reaching out, then pulling back. David moved towards the car first, his reaction more visceral than the others. Holy crap, he whispered, the usual edge to his voice softened by a flood of memories. His eyes reddened as he approached the sight of the car transporting him back to the days spent riding shotgun with Max. Drawn irresistibly to the driver's seat, he peered through the window, a spark of hope flickering in his gaze. "Do you think the keys are still with it?" he asked, his voice tinged with a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. Sam, still cradling the remnants of his plane, looked up and shrugged. "There's only one way to find out, right?" David managed a weak chuckle, his grief momentarily pierced by Sam's words. "I like the way you think, fatty," he said, the teasing devoid of its usual sting as they all stared at the car, caught between the past and a palpable, looming uncertainty. Charlie cautiously approached the car, heartened by the presence of his friends, yet still hesitant to touch it again after the unsettling experience earlier. He stopped just short of making contact, his attention drawn instead to a pool of liquid beneath the vehicle. Leaning down, he examined the slow, viscous drip that seemed to ooze from under the engine. Tentatively, he touched the puddle with his fingertips. The substance was slimy and unnaturally thick, resembling a mix of syrup and saliva, and it stung his skin slightly, prompting him to quickly wipe it off on his jeans. Just then, a sharp pop sounded as Dave swung the car door open and climbed inside. "David, no! What are you doing?" Nathan's voice was tinged with concern. "What's it look like I'm doing? I'm checking for keys," David retorted, settling into the driver's seat. He flipped down the visor and peered between the seats, searching. Nathan sighed and shook his head at David's recklessness. "What?" David looked up, his expression a mix of defiance and irritation. "First off, we shouldn't even be messing with this. If it's here for a reason. And second, if you're going to look for the keys, start with the ignition, you moron," Nathan chastised, pointing to the keys that were, in fact, dangling from the ignition. "No freaking way." David's frustration flipped to excitement in an instant. "Everybody get in here. We're taking this baby for a spin." "Shotgun!" Sam called out jubilantly, dashing to the passenger side. He dropped the fragments of the model plane he'd been holding, his attention now fully on the prospect of an adventurous ride. Nathan turned to Charlie, opening the driver's side rear door with a cautious glance. "You coming, Charlie?" he asked. "I'm getting in to make sure this idiot doesn't turn this into a wreck," he blurted out, then winced. I mean... Sorry." Charlie gave a dismissive wave, a faint smile on his face. "Don't worry about it. I'm going to sit this one out. Pretty sure Mom's already freaking out. I'll watch you guys go, though." "Well, you definitely won this one, Chuck. Charlie," David called out, his voice echoing slightly as he pulled the door shut behind him. "All right," Nathan replied, climbing awkwardly into the back seat. Just as he was about to pull the door shut, he jerked back with a startled yelp. "Whoa, guys, there's like a dozen dead rats back here. What the hell?" From the driver's seat, David's eyes lit up with a wild excitement, his laugh taking on an edge of hysteria. "Sorry, Nathan, can't hear you over the sound of how awesome this is going to be. Let's get this party started." "Hey, I'm stuck." Nathan's voice pitched in panic, his foot kicking out of the car as he tried to unstick himself from something unseen, his hands pushing desperately against the car's frame. Through the windshield, Charlie watched with growing dread as David turned the key. The car growled, a deep, menacing rumble that seemed to come from a beast rather than an engine. "Listen to that engine purr," David cheered, oblivious to the ominous sound. Sam's voice broke through the growl of the engine, laced with a hint of alarm. "Hey, my seat! Sweat! It's kind of slimy!" He began to shift uncomfortably, his moments causing the car to rock slightly. "Hey, I can't move. What's going on, guys? Are you pulling a prank on me?" His tone escalated from confusion to panic as he struggled against the seat. Meanwhile, Nathan's attempts to free himself became more desperate. "Charlie, help!" he yelled, his voice filled with panic as he tried to pull himself out of the back seat. But before Charlie could react, the rear door slammed shut with a horrific, crushing force. The sound of crunching bones filled the air, followed by Nathan's screams of agony. A few severed fingers clattered to the ground. Inside the car, David's expression twisted into one of sheer terror. He tugged frantically at his hands, which were now stuck to the steering wheel, his efforts futile against the unseen force binding him. Simultaneously, a viscous liquid began to drip down the interior of the windows, obscuring Charlie's view. The substance smeared across the glass like thick, congealing blood, distorting his view into a nightmarish scene. From the dim shadows inside the car, the screams of his friends became muffled, their fingers blurred and twisted through the dripping liquid. Charlie stood frozen in horror, witnessing the transformation of the car into a living trap, the doors sealing shut with a finality that echoed the monstrous nature of the vehicle. The engine's roar morphed into a deep, guttural growl. Not of a machine, but a beast, alive with malevolent intent. The horrifying realization that the car was not merely a car anymore, but a predatory entity washed over Charlie in a cold wave of dread. The vehicle seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, the once familiar contours now appearing to breathe and flex like the muscles of a great, dark creature. Charlie backed away slowly, horror-stricken, as the scene unfolded. The car, once an object of cool, metallic allure, transformed grotesquely before Charlie's eyes. With a sudden, violent jerk, the hood of the car split open like a jaw unhinging, revealing not an engine, but a horrifying array of sharp, jagged teeth gleaming wetly under a dim lamp nearby. The car shuddered violently, its frame contorting as thin, spindly legs, more like those of an insect than any machine, thrust out from underneath. Another pair burst forth from the front, lifting the car into a nightmarish semblance of a creature poised to hunt. From within, the windows darkened as if tinted by the shadows of doom itself, sealing David, Nathan, and Sam inside. Their screams pierced the night, muffled quickly as the darkness swallowed them whole. Charlie, rooted in place by terror, watched in horror as Nathan's leg grotesquely snapped, detached completely, and fell to the ground with a sickening thud. The car, no, the creature, began to rock violently, emitting sloshing sounds that churned Charlie's stomach. That same thick, saliva-like liquid he had touched earlier now oozed profusely from every crevice of the monstrous vehicle, pooling around it like the secretions of some giant predatory insect. The screams from within tapered off into wet, gurgling sounds as the car devoured its occupants. Charlie, seizing a moment of clarity amidst the terror, bolted. His frantic steps kicked up debris, the noise drawing the monstrous vehicle's attention. With jerky, stilted movements, the creature turned towards him. Its form grotesquely morphed, revealing dozens of eyes on stalk-like protrusions. The car's front split into 4 petal-like sections, each lined with hundreds of serrated teeth. The beast emitted a scream that chilled Charlie to his core, a sound that resonated with the stuff of nightmares. He ran blindly, not daring to look back. The only clues to the beast's proximity, the thunderous gallop of its massive legs and the unsettling slosh of liquid with each stride. As Charlie made a sudden turn down another path, the creature, weighed down by the fluid within, misjudged the maneuver. It stumbled, its bulk crashing into a heap of debris, giving Charlie a precious lead. Charlie recognized the washing machine, its sleek casing standing out amid the rusted ruins scattered around it. It was the same machine near which he'd found the eerie cat skeleton. Fueled by a surge of desperate hope, he rushed towards it. To his relief, the door opened smoothly, silently. He slipped inside, swiftly, and slammed it shut, the beast's menacing roars resonating through the metal just as he secured his temporary refuge. Inside the metal drum, Charlie let out a hushed sigh of relief, believing he could hide here until it was safe to escape. Thoughts of his mother flickered through his mind. What would he tell her? How could he explain the night's horrors? And what about his friend's parents? As he settled into the uneasy safety of the washing machine, a warm, syrupy substance splattered against the back of his neck. Startled, Charlie reached back, his fingers coming away sticky with a substance reminiscent of saliva. He pinched it between his fingers, rubbing them together. The realization dawned on him as the washing machine began to growl. You have been listening to a presentation of Point of Insanity Game Studio. Visit us on the web at poigamestudio.com. Follow us on Twitter at poigamestudio. Look us up on Facebook and email us at poigamestudio@gmail.com.